Hi, I'm Duane Larson. I'm the principal at Alisat Middle School.
What are you most excited about this year?
Having staff and students back in person is so fun and exciting. The last 18 months were tough, and we know that staff worked really hard, lots of students worked hard, but we did not get the educational or social emotional outcomes that we normally aim for. And so that was hard. And to have them back in school, it's not an instant fix and everyone's caught up and ready to go, but it's taken a lot of work, but it's still the first step toward kind of having life back to normal.
How do you encompass equity as a leader?
We're in the 5th year of having an active equity committee and ensuring that equity is embedded in our work. Part of my job is to make sure that the team continues to function, but more than that the team's voice is heard by giving them the opportunity to share out and provide PD for the entire staff. Another way I encompass equity is considering all of the issues we deal with it through an equity lens.
How do you include the David Douglas equity lens when making building-wide decisions?
When I think of a lens, I think of two things. First, I think of a lens in our eye. It's physically part of the eye, which means it's at the forefront of everything we see. It's the first part of kind of the physical act of seeing. So using the equity lens, therefore, means it's the first way to look at anything we're considering. Second, I think of the lens as part of the eye that brings everything into focus. So to see any issue clearly, we have to consider equity any and every time we are putting energy into making decisions how to better serve our kids.
What does a racially affirming school environment look like?
Students at Alisat should be regularly throughout their day and throughout the whole school year having their identity affirmed. This takes place in so many ways. Teachers are using culturally responsive teaching practices. Many of these include actions, activities, and strategies that teachers can use to help students feel seen and more affirmed.
What is your equity stance?
The idea of being equitable has always been important to me. Being fair, I even see it as partly being kind and just making sure that you treat people fairly and treat people the right way. It's been even more on the forefront of everyone's brains, and I'll say hearts too, due to just changes in our society and some big events that have happened. The last 4 years I've worked with Tay Spears and I learned so much, and as a middle-aged, white, conservative guy, I got a totally different perspective from someone working with her day in and day out. And I got to grow past the kind of resistance and, well, what do you mean white supremacy? And what do you mean by a white privilege? Because I don't do bad things to people and I don't discriminate, but I've learned a different perspective. And so it's helped me to refocus. We talked about equity lens, but my stance is this is something that's important. It needs to be throughout our day. It needs to be throughout our year. It needs to be in our heads and our hearts as we make decisions.
How will you use data to ensure equitable outcomes for students?
Data, data, data. We have several sources of data that we use. We always are talking about data and what good data and what can we do with it. Some is given to us, some we actually ask students and teachers for in surveys and other things. Two specific examples of how we use data in equity work would come from our state testing and surveys that we do, like Youth Truth. So both of those sources of data are able to be disaggregated by grade, sex, race, and ethnicity. And when you do that and you examine and you compare data, there's highlights that come out and there's concerns that pop out. One of the regular concerning areas we see is when any minority group falls behind other groups. So this takes us back to the earlier questions about equity and encompassing equity in the lens, because we then have to make decisions based on that. And obviously what it comes out to often is the gaps that we see. And so we get that from data, and then the most important thing is to see it, recognize it, and address it.
What equity practices do you hope to see in every classroom?
So we've been concentrating on CRTs here at Alisat, and first we initially picked 3, then we've added 3, and now we're looking at which ones to add. But just the simplest things like knowing kids' names, pronouncing them and using them, not just knowing them, but saying them correctly, having materials that reflect our student population, using wait time to allow a student to think and time to take time to answer a question, not just move on to the next kid who might know the answer faster. There's lots of things that we can recognize when we go into classes, and our teachers are doing a good job incorporating those.
As you reflect on your spring and summer hiring practices, share your efforts and outcomes to diversify your school for both classified and certified positions.
We did not do much hiring at that time, but in the past we've had the opportunity to hire regularly. It's well known that there's a true difficulty in finding licensed educator candidates of color, but we do have a lot of victories when it comes to diversifying our classified staff. Not too many years ago, our staff of color consisted of a Hispanic ESL teacher and a Hispanic coach and activities coordinator. And really in the end, I feel like those being the only two people of color on staff actually added to the stereotypes. So our Hispanic teacher is teaching kids from other languages, and the other person of color is doing activities and coaching, and those kind of make stereotypes even stronger to the kids at school that might see that. I'm happy to say that our staff is more diverse now than it's ever been, and that's one of the biggest changes we've made over the last few years. They are also great staff members, not simply people hired to fill in a quota or to say, yes, we've got some, but they are great staff members, and we function better as an entire community having a more diverse staff. I'm Duane Larson. I'm the principal of Alisant Middle School, and I do believe in equity.